This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Ash, Christopher Mitchell and 212th Trooper, and brought to you by 212th Trooper who requested this topic. If there is a video you want me to make, just head over to Patreon or become a channel member and select the Pickled Producer tier, since among other benefits, this will guarantee that your video is made, be it the continuation of an existing series or a brand new story. Also, while I have you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, since it costs you nothing and helps tell YouTube you like what I do. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Following his chat with Bruce around Shoto, Todoroki, and the probable threat he poses, Izuku attempts to track down Bakugou, figuring he should be warned as well, though unfortunately it seems fate has other ideas, as it is at this time that the voice with present mic announces that it's time for the final stage of the sports festival to begin, the battle tournament. Joining the finalists out in a concrete battlefield courtesy of Cementos, Izuku listens as Mike explains that these will be one-on-one battles in which students must defeat their opponents in one of four ways: knock them out, force a surrender, cause them to leave the ring, or render them unable to move. With this explained, it is time to draw lots, with Izuku being surprised to see that his is the first name drawn, meaning he will be opening the battle tournament against Mei. Be it good or bad fortune, both Bakugou and Todoroki are in the back half of the bracket, with Bakugou heading up the 6th fight, while Shoto mirrors Izuku as the last name drawn, so it'll be a while before he gets a chance to get a face-to-face time with either. Nonetheless, recognizing that he should be focusing on his own battle lest he wind up a first-round washout, Izuku heads to one end of the field while everyone else but Mei depart to wait their turn. Then on Mike's call, they begin. However, he is not the only one with an amplified voice, as activating a small headset mic she equipped, Mei welcomes all those watching to a little showcase as she demonstrates why her craftsmanship is superior to the legendary Wayne tech. She then dares Izuku to prove her wrong if he thinks he can, her giggle making it clear that she means to sneakily goad him like she did with Bakugou in the cavalry battle. However, Izuku will not fall for it, instead playing smart as he reaches for a batarang, though to his dismay, he finds only 2 left after his little stunt on the minefield. Knowing he'll have to use these sparingly, he draws one, hurling it in a curved arc as a means to test his foe's defenses. As expected, she does have something up her sleeve, or rather, on her belt, as using a hydraulic lift, she's able to avoid the projectile and then fire her belt grappler into the ground at Izuku's feet, sending her whizzing towards him. As she does, she comments that while she would have liked to be able to give a direct comparison between her grapple speed and carry weight against a Wayne Tech one, Izuku's grapple was rudely broken in the last round, so the audience will just have to take her word that her baby is better. While she has been monologuing, Izuku has managed to roll out of the way, but using those zoom eyes of hers to track him, Mei lazily fires a net gun, binding his feet and causing him to hit the ground hard. Thankfully, she does not press this advantage, instead asking the audience to look at the strength of the net, though this demonstration does go a little awry when Izuku deftly slices his way to freedom with a second batarang, and then throws it at her. Like last time, Mei's lift is able to prevent her from taking a hit, though only because her keen eyes allow her to see the batarang coming. This gives Izuku an idea, and so he rushes in while pulling something new from his belt, trusting that Mei will have a gadget to defend herself from close quarters combat too. In this, he is quite correct, as she employs the speed booster she would have canonically given to Ida to dart backwards, with this being perfect, as like she said during the cavalry battle, this is caused to use her zoom quirk and zero in with her eyes to compensate for the increased speed. However, perhaps it would have been better if she had not, as when he's sure she zoomed in close on him, he reveals the tool he grabbed before, a flashbang which goes off, and thanks to her enhanced sight, feels as though it was detonated right in her face. Letting her shriek, Mei staggers back blinded, coming close to the edge of the ring, and while her gyroscopic senses prevent her from falling, nothing can stop what happens next. Izuku continues closing the distance and lands a front kick right on her stomach, sending the pink-haired girl tumbling out of bounds and propelling him into the second round. Naturally, Mei is not thrilled with this outcome, as she is forced to bashfully admit that perhaps her babies aren't quite on par with the great Bruce Wayne yet, though as Izuku gathers up his fallen batarangs, she beams that his tech's really impressive, and she'd love to play with it sometime, her glowing yellow eyes and intense vibe causing a shiver to run down the boy's spine. Following this, the first round continues with Abara defeating Sero by sending her vine hair underground to catch him by surprise and toss him out of the ring, with the battle after that being Ochaco versus Awase. Here Awase demonstrates an impressive handle on his meld quirk to bind Ochaco's feet to the ground, preventing her from floating. However, as he will learn, the girl is no one-trick pony, as demonstrating her Batman martial arts, she's able to pin him even while her feet are stuck in one place. Next up is Mina versus Tetsu, which is fairly open and shut, since acid melts steel, followed by Kaibara versus Tokiyami, in which Kaibara tries to throw possessed items at the bird boy, but Dark Shadow proves itself the superior supernatural force, tanking these hits and ramming Kaibara out of the ring. Now at last comes Bakugou's fight, and it is similarly brief, as when Hononuki tries to soften the ground to trap his foe, Bakugou simply flies over it, and blasts him point blank for a ruthless KO that reminds everyone why he is one of the top dogs in terms of power. Sadly, the next match between 1A and 1B students does not go so well, as when Monoma offers Kirishima what appears to be a manly handshake, the red-haired boy accepts, only for the blonde to immediately harden his own hand and gut-shot Kirishima, sending him flying into the barrier and out of bounds. begins. Then there is the final match, Ida versus Todoroki. And while Izuku readies himself, preparing to make mental notes of what power Shoto has been holding back, he does not get much of a chance, as when Ida runs at him, Todoroki simply makes an ice slick, causing the speedster to slip and tumble off the ring for a rather ignoble end to his sports festival run and the first round. And so the second round begins, this time pitting Izuku against Class 1B Zabara, whose plant terror already eliminated one unwary foe right off the bat. Refusing to be the second casualty of this tactic, Izuku waits until Abara burrows her hair underground, at which point he lets off a smoke bomb, obscuring his position and stepping back, as he figures that Abara will assume he's using cover to close and attack her like he did Mei. This theory proves to be correct, as when the torrent of vines emerge a moment later it is right in front of where Izuku had been standing, with this being just where he wants them. As lobbing a batarang, he slices through the plant matter, ending its threat. However, this is not all it does, as knowing Abara can just make her hair grow to regain the lost length, Izuku endeavors to resolve this problem root and stem, with his batarang therefore emerging from the smoke and also chopping Abara's hair just below the neck. While some might be pleased with the fashion of a new haircut, Abara is not one of them, angrily howling something about 1 Corinthians 11:15. Not that Izuku is listening, as having used the batarang as a distraction in the smoke for cover, he has snuck up behind his opponent, and now lays a batarang to her throat, instructing her to yield. In a tone of incredible reluctance, Abara does so, allowing Mina and Ochaco to begin their match. In contrast to some of the more antagonistic battles, this is just two good pals having fun in a friendly but fierce fight, where they both do their best to prove themselves while encouraging the other. However, in the end there must be a victor, with this ultimately being Ochaco, as a floating double kick from above KOs Mina. After this comes Bakugou vs Tokiyami, which just goes like canon a little earlier, shortly followed by Todoroki vs Monoma. While none would expect it going in, this is the match that teeters closest to disaster, as when Todoroki rushes Monoma, the blonde boy deftly dodges this while placing a hand on Shoto's shoulder to gain access to his quirk, or rather, quirks. As when he attempts to use his free left hand to freeze Todoroki with his own ice, he instead lets loose a torrent of flame that the burned boy must glide away from at top speed. Sneering sardonically, Monoma states that Todoroki should use this side more, as he can feel the power of it, all the while manifesting some ice to try and hamper his opponent's escape. Unfortunately, this just makes Shoto angry, as fixing his mismatched eyes on Monoma, he declares that he doesn't need that bastard's quirk, more or less confirming Izuku's theory, before manifesting some ice of his own. While more experienced with the quirk, the fact that he is limiting himself does come to bite Shoto here, as Monoma is able to melt all the ice sent his way while firing back in kind, so that soon he is advancing on Todoroki, his arm ablaze, as he smugly asks why doesn't the other boy just quit since he's clearly not good enough to keep going. This is precisely the wrong thing to say, as it ironically fires Todoroki up, giving him the burst of willpower needed to unleash a heaven-piercing ice wall, freezing Monoma, his flames and everything around him in an overkill incapacitation that secures his semi-final spot against Bakugou. As for Izuku, his semi's opponent is none other than Ochaco, with the two friends smiling at each other as they are called to face off. Curiously, Ochaco asks if Izuku would be open to the idea of using this fight to showcase their Batman martial arts, making the boy laugh as he remembers their first meeting and nods. Tossing aside his utility belt for the time being, the green-haired youth takes his stance, and as the call is given to start, the duo rush one another. Figuring the first step is to assess his opponent's abilities, Izuku starts proceedings off with a hook kick. Though demonstrating that she's no slouch, Ochaco uses her arm to block this before stepping in for a body blow that capitalizes on his more unstable footing, and then a second to knock him prone. However, this is not enough to keep the Dark Knight in training down, as rolling backwards, he pushes up with his feet into a standing position, then rapidly closes the distance for a flurry of blows. While Ochaco is able to block some of these, she cannot stop them all, and for each hit that connects she grows a little more punch-drunk and sore, weakening her guard and allowing more to get in. As a result, it seems that she will soon be knocked out or pushed back over the edge, though this latter point is in fact a feint, as when Izuku comes in for what is meant to be a finishing blow, Ochaco pivots, locking one arm around his wrist and the other under his arm as she attempts to throw him out of bounds instead. Thankfully, Izuku is not out of tricks, as rather than fighting the throw, he allows himself to be lifted, only to stomp both feet into one of Ochaco's knees, causing it to buckle and forcing her to drop him. As they go down, the freckled boy asks if his friend is alright, though smiling confidently, the brunette nods that this is exactly what she wanted. Then, before he can recover, Ochaco pounces, going for a pin. On instinct, Izuku attempts to counter this, using her weight and momentum for a reversal, so that as their bodies wrap around each other and they roll end over end, he is able to come out on top, rather literally, having found himself seated on Ochaco's stomach, his hands on either side of her face. Naturally, the realization of this awkward position makes the boy blush, though by the time he has leapt off her, Mike has already deemed this an incapacitation and given him leave to advance to the finals. However, as the pair head for their respective dressing rooms to recover from that intense bout, they are met by none other than Batman, waiting for them in the corridor beneath the stands. Despite the fact that the kids are both thoroughly tired, they perk up at once when they see him, with Ochaco, who has had far less face time with the American hero, questioning if everything is okay. Nodding, Bruce replies that it is, and he came down here to congratulate them both on a match well fought, and to tell them that he looks forward to working with them for their upcoming internships. This is clearly a huge weight off Ochaco's mind, as a part of her had feared that he was going to revoke her scholarship for losing, and so giving the man a big thumbs up, she promises to do her best. As for Izuku, there is someone else he wants to talk to, as now that Bakugou and Todoroki are set to face off, it's now or never if he's going to warn his rival about the burned boy. To this end, he stays in the corridor close to the arena entrance waiting for the blonde to appear, with it not taking long for this to occur, as President Mike invites him and Shoto out to fight. Upon spotting him, Bakugou harshly asks what Deku wants. Though ignoring this attitude, the green-haired youth states that he wants to help him beat Todoroki, since he's learned some important things about him and... However, before he can say more, Bakugou thrusts a hand out to silence him, snarling he doesn't want to hear another word out of the damn nerd's mouth. He beat Icy Hot in the cavalry battle all by himself, even if Deku thinks he helped. So now he's going to beat him again, and then in the finals he's going to show Deku and everyone else that a quirkless punk like him has no place in this school. Urgently, Izuku hisses that he's making a mistake, but it seems the conversation is already over, as Bakugou shoulder barges past him and onto the field, his eyes already locked on Todoroki. However, it would have been wiser had Bakugou listened, as having deemed him his biggest competition after the stunt in the cavalry battle, Shoto already has a plan in place to beat the brash blonde, darting forward in his ice while creating more all around the ring. This has two purposes. The first is intimidation, plain and simple, as a demonstration of the mastery he already has over his ice quirk, while the second is to rapidly cool the air, as due to nitroglycerin having a freezing point of 14 degrees Celsius, or 55 Fahrenheit, just this is enough to chill Bakugou's sweat so that it takes longer to detonate, long enough that Todoroki can close the distance, and flash freeze the other boy, winning him the match without ironically breaking a sweat. From the sidelines, Izuku grimaces, as it is plain to see that between the ending of the cavalry battle and Monoma's stunt with his fire quirk, Shoto is riled up and has stopped pulling his punches, not that he was pulling them all that much beforehand. Nonetheless, when called, the green-haired boy joins his scarred rival on the pitch, where he attempts to give him a similar pep talk as in canon, about giving it his all and accepting the fire side of his quirk as his own rather than his father's. While Shoto is somewhat shocked, having never spoken to the other boy about Endeavor, and how he was raised as a weapon against All Might, this is a double-edged sword, as without Izuku's own clear ties to the symbol of peace, he has no reason to believe the green-haired boy can understand him, nor does he care about what he's saying, and so simply attempts to freeze him with a jet of ice. Having seen this coming, Izuku is able to dive out of the way, though unfortunately by gliding on his ice, Shoto is faster, closing the distance between him and his foe, and blasting him point blank. In an instant, Izuku is frozen solid like Bakugou and Monoma were, with it seeming this is another open and shut immobilization. That is until a flash of light erupts from inside the ice, sending shrapnel raining everywhere while an injured Izuku hobbles forward. Looking stunned, Todoroki demands to know how this is possible, to which Izuku answers that he knew Shoto was going to try and get in close and freeze him when long range didn't work, and he also knew he wouldn't be able to outrun him, so instead he used that split second to pull the pins of as many of his flashbangs as he could, trusting that concussive force and the chain reaction of them all going off in close range would be enough to break the ice. Still bewildered, Shoto next asks why, since he was the only one who took damage from that move, and he used up all his resources, meaning he could only do it once. Though smiling weakly as he moves close towards his rival, Izuku retorts that he only needed to do it once to prove that sometimes his ice isn't enough. Then, with that said, he passes out, ending their match, and with it the sports festival. Fortunately, it only takes a short visit from Recovery Girl to get Izuku back on his feet, with this being good as now he needs to take his place on the podium with Todoroki and Bakugou. Naturally, the blonde boy is livid at ranking below Deku again, though truthfully the freckled youth isn't looking at him, he's looking up at Shoto, trying to tell if his message got through, and he was able to help the hurt child hidden beneath all that ice. Sadly, Izuku is not given much time to check as the following day classes resume as per normal, which means everyone is buried once more under their workload, now coupled with the fact that it's time to begin their work study program at a real-life hero agency. As part of this, the students are required to pick their hero names, which more or less goes as canon, except obviously Izuku will be calling himself Batman, while Bakugou adds Lord Deathman to his long list of refused names for being overly sinister or violent. As for Ochaco, she announces that she's going to call herself Batgirl, due to also being an intern at Batman Inc., and wanting to honor the man who made her education possible, as well as a hero she looks up to. After this, the class has shown how many pro-heroes expressed interest in having each of them as interns, with Todoroki unsurprisingly getting the most, though shockingly, Izuku got almost as many, with Ochaco and Bakugou being close behind, as tied third place recipients. However, both Izuku and Ochaco are already spoken for as conditions of their scholarships, this making matters easier, so the week later when it comes time to begin their work study, the pair catch the train down to the Wayne Tech building. At Bruce's instruction, both are already dressed in their hero costumes, with the reason becoming clear as soon as they arrive, as waiting for them in the lobby is not Bruce Wayne in a tailored suit, but Batman. Seeing no reason to beat around the bush, the Dark Knight instructs his 2 interns to come with him, since now that they've gotten permission to this work study, he can begin giving them real-world training. Admittedly, this is more aimed at Izuku than Ochaco, as up until now she has received no training at all from him. Though all the same, the pair follow their patron to a nearby rooftop for the first of their lessons on urban traversal and tailing a target without being seen. As this is the kids' first foray into actual hero work, this is done on innocent civilians, who are distinct enough to pick out in a crowd, with Bruce having them mark their target and follow them for 20 minutes before reporting back on their movements. It is good, safe practice that will serve them well when investigating real villains, though not everything can be that way, as when they move on to interrogation tactics, it requires locating some actual villains even if they are small fries who can't pose a genuine threat. As part of this, Bruce shows them how to apply just the right amount of pressure to certain spots on the body to both ensure that they can't get away, and to make it clear that they are willing and capable of doing more harm if the target is not forthcoming. Unfortunately, due to Izuku and Ochaco not having their hero licenses yet, they are not actually allowed to lay hands on a villain and practice these techniques, having to watch and learn instead, with it creating a somewhat awkward moment when in the midst of Batman interrogating a street thug about an incoming drug shipment, Izuku is there to the side muttering to himself and taking notes in his hero notebook. This is the way of things for the next few days, with the 2 interns learning a lot from this hands-on education, so much so that on the evening of the 3rd day, Bruce brings them with him on an actual investigation to Hosu City, explaining that they're searching for a particularly dangerous psychopath calling himself the hero killer Stain, who is on a fanatical crusade to murder any hero he deems hypocritical, which seemingly are all of them. From the intel he's already gathered, it's probable that Stain is still in Hosu, since so far he's only attacked one hero here, that being Ingenium, and generally likes to make good use of a hunting ground before moving on to another. A little worriedly, Ochaco asks if it might be too dangerous for herself and Izuku to go after someone capable of defeating pros, though in that tone of unwavering certainty that many find reassuring, Bruce tells her that the 2 of them will not be engaging Stain if they find him. Instead, they are to contact him and he will apprehend the villain. However, this just raises a new question. Why would they have to contact him when they're going together? Though when Izuku asks this, Bruce replies that to cover more ground, they'll be splitting up, with him taking the area around where Ingenium was attacked since that's where Stain's most likely to be lying low, while the interns will investigate the business district where most of the city's hero agencies are, since he might be drawn there to scope out new prey. To help facilitate this investigation, when it's just her and Izuku, Ochaco uses her quirk to make them both weightless, meaning when Izuku activates his glider and his cape, they can fly indefinitely, though this does mean he has to hold her around the waist. Naturally, this earns matching blushes from the pair, not that the other sees it as they are both too busy scanning for the hero killer. While they do not see him, they are met by something else, a scene of carnage in the business district, as several Nomu are terrorizing the area. In a tone of concern, Ochaco states they have to go help the heroes in the scene, though logically, Izuku retorts that they have it under control, and all the 2 of them would achieve is to add in more complication. Instead, he'd like to check the alleys around here, since it seems a little coincidental that the League of Villains and Forces would show up at the same place as the hero killer, so he has to wonder if they're working together, and if so, Stain would want to be nearby to oversee things. In a tone of admiration, Ochaco praised that he sounded just like Mr. Wayne when he made that deduction, with the boy smiling beneath his mask, as the 2 of them at last touch down on top of a nearby building and put their newfound tracking skills to the test. Thanks to this, it does not take them long to spot movement in a secluded alley, and upon drawing near, they spot a figure they assume is Stain standing over the wounded body of the pro-hero native along with... Is that Ida? Activating his helmet's inbuilt comm, Izuku quickly contacts Bruce, relaying where they are and that they have the hero killer in their sights. Proudly, the Caped Crusader tells them to stay where they are and wait for his arrival, though this may come too late, as it seems that Stain has decided to kill Ida. Briefly, the pair discuss what it means to be a hero and the path of vengeance Ida has been on ever since the hero killer crippled his brother, though this is just delaying the inevitable, as after proclaiming that Ida will be a necessary casualty on the road to a better world, Stain draws a blade and prepares to strike. However, just before the steel can pierce Ida's back, a batarang whooshes out of the darkness, colliding with the blade and sending it off course. Looking around for the interloper, Stain demands to know who goes there, but the only answer he receives is a pair of glowing white eyes that emerge from the darkness. Recognizing his classmate's costume, Ida attempts to tell Izuku to leave, since this is his fight, though in that deep modulated voice that adds a sinister tone to his words, Izuku replies that as All Might always says, giving help even when not asked is the essence of a true hero. He then charges at Stain, figuring that since he has a long blade, the best course of action is to get in close and neutralize that advantage, a tactic the villain recognizes and even praises, though this does not mean he will spare the Bat Brat as he swings for his neck. However, as Stain will learn, taking away his advantage is not the only reason Izuku has gotten up close and personal, as this is where his fighting style thrives, with him raising a gauntlet to catch the sword in one of its side blades, before bringing the other in for a punch that would have broken the hero killer's nose if he still had it. Following up on this, Izuku next steps in for a body blow which Stain has to block with a flat of his blade, blade, with the same being true of the elbow to the jaw the boy attempts to chain off this. And while both these hits are ultimately unsuccessful, the hero killer recognizes that he has been forced on the defensive, something that rarely happens against the usual false heroes. Once again, this leaves Stain feeling at least somewhat impressed, though since this kid is standing in the way of his righteous justice, he still has to die, a fate the villain attempts to bestow with one of his little throwing knives aimed at Izuku's femoral artery, only to be met by disappointment when he cannot cut all the way through the material of his batsuit in a single slice. For this dirty trick, Stain is rewarded with a powerful front kick that sends him toppling into the alley wall, though this is a blessing in disguise, as having landed near Native, he pulls him close and puts a blade against the man's throat while ordering Izuku to put his hands in the air. Refusing to allow someone to be hurt needlessly on his watch, Izuku complies, while also deactivating the suit's glowing eyes for some reason. Though, what that reason is becomes clear a moment later, as a flashbang lands in front of Stain courtesy of Ochaco still on the roof. Then, as the blinded hero killer recoils, Izuku reactivates his optic display and tosses a batarang directly into Stain's wrist, causing him to cry out in pain, dropping both his blade and hostage. This is just what Izuku had been waiting for, as without a word, he advances on his target once again, and delivers a brutal spin kick that sees the villain crash hard against the opposite wall. Getting a little desperate now, Stain next attempts to grab Ida, endeavoring not to make the same mistake with this hostage, though here he is once again stopped by Ochaco, who, figuring she's already disobeyed Mr. Wayne by getting involved, decides to help to the fullest, descending into the alley and using her quirk to carry Ida and Native to safety. This frees Izuku up to focus entirely on the fight, with him driving 2 more quickfire punches into Stain's stomach, making him double over against the wall. Figuring the man is beaten, Izuku steps forth to capture him, only to be met by a sudden impact as half of his optical display goes out, revealing that Stain had attempted to stab him in the eye, hoping this might be a weak point in the suit. Unfortunately for the hero killer, Izuku's batsuit has no weak points, a fact he makes clear as he slams his face into Stain's for a painful headbutt that puts him on the ground. In his raspy voice, the villainous vigilante asks just who is this kid, and glaring down at him through his one glowing eye, Izuku replies, "I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman." From behind him, a new voice then grunts in dry amusement, and recognizing his mentor even from this minute sound, Izuku informs him that the hero killer has been neutralized. In a flat tone, Bruce replies that he can see that, before adding that a couple of pros are on the way, so they can take Stain to custody from there. To his credit, even in the face of 2 Batmen and the prospect of a very long incarceration, Stain does not plead or try to flee, instead simply looking Bruce squarely in the eye and stating in no uncertain terms that he is a hypocrite. For one sometimes called the symbol of vengeance, he only exacts vengeance on those society has deemed villains, where if he were a true hero, he'd apply his wrath equally between friend and foe. For a moment, no one speaks. Then in a measured voice, Bruce shockingly replies that he is right, though he has spent a long time trying to correct that issue, and even if he sometimes backslides into that old habit of turning a blind eye to the wrongs of his allies, he at least has gained enough wisdom to stop before it is too late. Following this declaration, silence reigns once again, though it is not a long-lasting one, as less than a minute later, Ochaco and the promised pros arrive, with Stain being cuffed and hauled away, while in the aftermath, Bruce pulls Izuku aside since they need to talk. Having hunch he knows what this is about, the green-haired boy resignedly follows his mentor back onto the roof with his repaired grappler and braces himself to be chewed out. However, once again in a surprising move, Bruce opens by acknowledging that he understands why Izuku did what he did, but he's still disappointed, since it was reckless, and once again the boy's innate desire to save people overrode his judgment and caused him to put himself in danger needlessly. Passionately, Izuku protests that he was just trying to make sure that Ida wasn't killed, adding that All Might would never allow that, though in a flat tone, Bruce factually states that Izuku is not All Might. The reason men like All Might and Clark can take such risks is because they are gods among men built to handle such things. The boy is not. Letting out a remorseful sigh, Izuku accepts the logic of this and apologizes, causing Bruce to give a nod and say that he's forgiven, though before the 2 Batmen can return to the crime scene to give their statement, Izuku does have one question for his teacher: who's Clark? And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.